Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is Peter Winnick. I'm the founder and CEO of Thought Leadership Leverage, and you're joining us on the podcast today, which is Leveraging Thought Leadership. Today, my guest is Thom Singer. Thom is an advisor to executives, a speaker, and content creator. He had a successful career in sales and marketing and then became a growth leadership speaker back in 2009. A decade later, he has brought his energy presentations and action-oriented content to over 800 audiences. Thom knows that as a speaker or master of ceremonies, he has a responsibility to set the tone for a strong conference experience. He's also the author of 12 books. I'm not going to name them all because we'll run out of time. And he's been interviewed over 400 entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, etc., on his podcast, which is Cool Things Entrepreneurs Do. So without further ado, here we are. How are you, Thom?
Peter, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on your show.
So let's, my pleasure. Let's start with the transition, because I think there are a lot of people that aspire to, hope to, wish to, dream about actually doing it, right? So maybe go back, if you've been doing this since 2009, so let's go back to like 07, 08. What was going on in your head, and then what gave you the confidence to finally say, I'm there?
Well, yeah. I spent my career in sales and marketing. And when you're in sales and marketing, you go to a lot of conferences, either ones your company puts on to bring into the sales team or things you go to for clients. And I would sit in the audience and watch the speakers and think, wow, she or he, they have a better job than I do. I mean, it was like,
and they work less. They're only there for an hour.
Right. Well, and I had no idea even what they got paid, but I thought, what a cool way to live, to be able to go and talk to people. So I would go up afterwards, I'd buy their book, I'd stand in line, and I'd ask them about what they did and how they did it. And there were a lot of people who had sort of what I now call a traditional speaker model business. And I was like, that seems like I would be so happy if I could do that. And some of them would be like, well, let's go have a cup of coffee and I'll tell you everything you could ever need to know. Mm-hmm. Others were kind of jerks, like, oh, well, you have to be like me. And I just was quick at weeding through the wheat and the shaft of those people. Mm-hmm. And I got a lot of guidance, and I started doing it on the side. I wrote a book. I was, speaking to Rotary clubs and mm-hmm. companies. And then on April 1st, 2009, which arguably the bottom of the Great Recession.
And April Fool's Day.
And the irony of being laid off on April Fool's Day never lost on me. Yeah. I was laid off, and I decided I'm just going to go for it. I'm going to follow this dream and see if I can make it happen. And
okay, so let's recap. So step one is get fired. Right?
Yeah, right. Well, that's not even funny in our current situation, because that's
right. Yeah. Okay, so so if that didn't happen, this was already on your radar, on your mind. Did you have goals set up? Did you say, once I hit this, or in retrospect, was actually a good thing that it was the kick in the butt that forced you to say, okay, I guess now's the time?
So Peter, I think it's both. The company I was working for, actually my boss was fantastic. She was amazing. She knew I wanted to do this when she hired me. And she said, how long do you think your runway is until you can build up your reputation to be able to do it? And I told her I thought it would be about 3 years. And so she said, I'll make you a deal. I'll hire you. I'll give you extra vacation days. She paid me a little less, but I was free to travel to go give speeches because I had some flexibility. And it was about a little less than 2 years later when the recession just got too much and she had to lay off half her company. Now, to her credit, she saved the company. It's bigger and stronger now than it ever was. Awesome. But I was part of that cut of 50% because you don't need a high paid director of marketing when there is no one to buy your product.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it was a combination of I was doing it. I had goals, I had plans, but I often wonder, would I have done it a year later without the kick in the pants?
Sure.
So it worked out well.
All right, so let's pivot for a bit. I want to not parking lot. Let's not talk about this sort of the requisite skills that are required, because that's table stakes, and I don't want to underplay that because most people don't have that. You clearly have the chops of what does it take to be a great speaker. I want to talk for a moment on the business side of the house. So now there's a business, right? You're a marketing and sales guy, so you have to have a product. You have to package that product. You have to have a marketing engine. You have to have a sales system and cycle. So how did you go from being, sort of marketing and sales to being, the SVP of marketing and sales for the product that is you? Yeah. So talk about that for a moment.
And you hit it right on the bucket, is that I was the product. And I had been worked in law firms, banks, and consulting firms where I was selling people as a product, but it was other people. So it was really hard to go to that marketing myself, calling people going, hey, I'd be really good. So a lot of it, what I found was it was word of mouth, and it was networking, and it was reputation built. And fast forward 11 years, now I have a better product. I've done a lot more. I have certainly a reputation. It's still word of mouth, networking, and reputation that gets the business. So a lot of it is the more I spoke, the more people saw me and would say, hey, that was different than I thought it was going to be. We should have you come into my company. Would that work for a group of accountants? And so,
Okay, but I want to argue with that because there are many speakers, most I would say, that do get a lot of their business, meaning the more I speak, the more I speak, right? So every time I go out, whatever. I would always argue there a bit that says, okay, that's all fine and dandy, but what are the systems and processes that you have in place pre-speech, at the speech, and post-speech to accelerate or increase the probability of that happening, right? Because there's always going to be the 5 people at the end that'll wait in the rain or whatever to go shake your hand and all that sort of stuff. And listen, many of those people do book you, but how do you optimize that? Because
well,
people speaking there's processes that you do.
There are, and I wish I could tell you I was great at it, and I kind of suck at it. Originally, it was an Excel spreadsheet. Now it's a CRM. But so part of it is that, it's creating that touch point and follow up to people who maybe didn't book me last year. So a lot of speakers fall into the thing that maybe it is word of mouth and reputation. And really, if I go and look at my last 50 bookings, 40 of them came from someone saw me and hired me. I mean, it really,
Okay.
for me, it really has been that way. But sometimes if I really
No, but even on that, someone saw you
5 years ago, yeah.
No, but even no. So I want to get a little bit granular. So someone saw you. So let's say you did 50 gigs last year, 300 people in a gig, whatever the math is on that. A lot of people, right? Like 15,000 people, something like that, right? What are you doing to ensure that people know you're available to do this? What are you doing to collect their information, collect their emails,
Sure.
stay in touch with them, and all that? Like, walk through sort of your system. If I were to go see you to speak a week from Tuesday, what would I expect other than a great speech?
So I usually don't get to collect the whole audience's email because the type of places I work aren't going to give me that list, don't want me peppering their people and things like that. So a lot of it comes down to who am I connecting with in person or in social media who were there, and then it's trying to get them into that thing. But for me, a lot of it has to do, I mean, and maybe I just am lucky, but a lot of it really has had to do with having a conversation afterwards where somebody says,
Okay.
will that work for my company? Now I've got their card. Now that I've got them, now they're going into my CRM and I'm going to constantly drip on them. And some of these people who book me, it is 5 years later. And so it's keeping the
Okay, but I want to decompose that. So if we can't get their information, and I get that a lot of, if you're going into a company or association, they won't do it. Now there's some tricks that you can increase that, whatever.
Yep.
But now let's say it's the end of the speech and you had 4 or 5 interesting conversations with Sally and Joe and Bill and Bob. There are 2 types of speakers. One takes those cards, puts them in their jacket pocket, and then 3 weeks later when they take out the jacket, they go, oh yeah, I was in Denver 3 weeks ago, right? But it seems like you're disciplined to say, now I'm going to take that information, get it into my CRM. That's going to trigger a welcome aboard email. So what are you dripping to them in what cadence? Because I think this is the part that people have a hard time with.
So doing with the small touches, if I'm getting a card and having a conversation, I send a handwritten note to everybody citing that conversation. That's my first touch. And I will do that with 10 to 20 people after an event. I will sort
and within what time frame will I get that? Is within a day or 2 you'll knock that out?
You'll get it within a week. I mean, I will do it. Sometimes I travel with cards. My wife's real good about saying, do you have cards in your bag for the plane? And while I'm on the plane, I'll just
okay. So that's great. So if we had a conversation and we talked about, when you told the story about blah blah blah, and that really, you're making a mental note, and that'll be in there. So personal touch, a card, yes. Right? So you're standing out. Okay.
And if there was a legit, either they said we could hire you, or I know based on where they work for a large association or what, I will then follow up a week after that card with an email that basically says, hey, when we talked, or it's my assumption that this, who do I need to talk to within your company to be able to have that.
Okay. Good. And you said, listen, it could be 5 years, right? And then what's the drip that they're going to get? So that's a specific personalized touch point based on the interactions and the conversations, et cetera. Then what happens?
So I used to do a newsletter regularly, but I really wasn't getting that much out of it. So now I have what I call an occasional newsletter. So they've gone into
sporadic newsletter
thing. I try to get them connected. If they're a social media user, I try to get them connected through whatever they use. And then I'm pretty active on all the social media channels. I've literally had people hire me in the last year And I say, oh, how did you hear about me? And they said, oh, well, I follow you. You know, we met at a conference 5 years ago, or somehow they crossed my path, but I follow you. You do a good job on Twitter or whatever. And I don't think I do. But a lot
Okay,
of
but you'll track them down because you're going through this quickly because you're so good at it. But I want to make sure I don't miss the nuggets.
That's fine.
So then we've gone through this personal touch. You then track them down on social. You have some tools that can do that and say, I'll connect with them on LinkedIn, connect with them on Twitter, whatever. You're consistently putting out good content there, so you're staying top of mind. Anything else more personal, an email once a year? Like I'm trying to understand the cadence and the mix of touch points I'm going to get.
So I wish I could tell you I was really good at this system. My goal, I suck at this. And that's why I said, maybe I'm just lucky because I know there's a lot of people who live and die by their systems. I try to. Now that they're in my CRM, I always, when I have a touch point, I will schedule like 4 months later, 3 months later, email them again. So every couple times a year, if you're in my world, you know, hopefully it's going to pop up and I actually send some sort of a thing. Occasionally I'll call people. If they're really somebody who I should be there, like I know who their speakers were the last 3 years and they totally could hire somebody like me, I may call, but yeah, I don't have a great system. And maybe that's why I'm not making $1 million a year is I'm not as organized as I should be. I did have a salesperson working with me for a while.
Okay.
Great. Cause he was like, bam, bam, bam.
Yeah.
But again, it's a hard business. It really does come back to word of mouth. Now, part of that is you can start the word of mouth by reaching out cold to them or putting them onto a list. But I find my goal isn't to get them to hire me to speak. My goal is to get on their short list because in reality, I have found over 10 years or 11 years that if you really talk to me, you have a keynote or you need a master of ceremonies and you're serious that I have made the cut of one of those 3 you're going to talk to, I will usually win. Not always, but it's something like I last year looked at all the real.
If you're enjoying this episode of Leveraging Thought Leadership, please make sure to subscribe. If you'd like to help spread the word about our podcast, please leave us a review and share it with your friends. We're available on Apple Podcast and on all major listening apps, as well as at thoughtleadershipleverage.com/podcasts. So let's talk about that. That's interesting because oftentimes, listen, if they're looking at you, they're looking at somebody else, right? So most of the time, right? And then you got to know, I think there's a couple things. Oh, I always go up against so-and-so, or this one I'm going to win because, right? So I think sometimes people aren't looking at it and comparing apples and apples, right? You're not Malcolm Gladwell, right? So if it's not a choice between you and him, that's a different level of event. It goes by, price point, right? The style of event, the type of speakers they might have won. So why do you think you're winning in the bake-offs, right? Because they've got you and 3 other people theoretically equally qualified.
And theoretically, they are kind of similar. By the time they get to that, they're going to be similar. They're going to be in those areas. Once in my life, I went up against somebody that was out of my league. It was me and Biz Stone, the founder of Twitter.
Yeah.
And his fee was twice my fee. And the whole time I was going through this dog and pony show, there was like 3 calls. I could never figure out how it came down to the 2 of us. And they ended up at the last minute picking him. And I wasn't surprised at all. If they had a $25,000 budget and they wanted a celebrity, why was I even there?
Right, right.
But in most cases, I'm up against a peer. I don't ever run against the same person over and over. I just don't. It's rare that in a year I'll be down.
No, there are some speakers where, not often, where it's a little bit of Coke and Pepsi, right? This one goes against that one. Okay, so you're basically going by price point and probably reputation of the other speaker.
Style, yeah. It's usually going to be a high energy speaker who's talking about a business soft skill. Sometimes our topics will be like night and day, but it's still business soft skill topics. So, and I think the reason that I often do well is that I consider myself not just a speaker. I consider myself part of the meetings industry. I've been involved with the different meetings organizations. And I think that I talk their language. I think when I talk to I'm married to a meeting planner. She works for a large association. So,
wait. That's point 2. Get fired, marry a meeting planner.
That is true. That's a good.
Okay. We could have shortened this there. So so let's talk about that. So oftentimes I think speakers are, how would I put it? There's 2 masters that you have to serve as a speaker. There's the butt in the seat, right? And I think most speakers really, really get that. And sometimes to a fault, because many of those participants, the audience members, they've been voluntold, right? They didn't opt in to go. If I work for Oracle and there's an Oracle sales conference, I got to be at such and such a place at 10 o'clock on Tuesday, whether I like this guy, Thom, or not, right? That's just, they're serving chicken and I'm eating chicken, right? Then there's the buyer. So if you go to the meeting planner, what are the things that keep them up at night? So I think, obviously, if your wife's a meeting planner, you're really tuned into that. What are the things that you do to give them comfort? Because I think a lot of people don't realize that they're sending contracts with ridiculous requests of I only travel, first class and I need my room to be 7 steps from the elevator and all this stuff. Tell me, how do you make a meeting planner's life easy?
Well, I like to believe, first of all, is that I show up early and I stay late. So a lot of speakers, their greatest skill is getting to the airport 20 minutes after saying thank you very much.
Right.
So I came up with this term that I was the conference catalyst. And part of that is I'm going to help you have the best event ever. And it is true that a large chunk, I've never done it scientifically, so I don't want to make up a statistic, but a lot of them could care less. A lot of speakers don't care that I'm going to stay. A lot of them don't want me to stay. However, there is a swath of them who are like, you mean you would stay through lunch? And I'm like, yeah. They go, you're speaking at 8 a.m, but we have a networking lunch. You would come to that? And I'm like, of course. And they go, we've never had a speaker agree to stay. We always ask. Or will you stay through the evening and MC our awards dinner? We don't have a budget for it. I'm like, I'm there all day, pay for the extra hotel room. I'll do it. I mean, my thing is I try to say yes. Yeah. Will you do a breakout? I don't charge more for a breakout. And I've had other speakers get on me going, oh, you can charge $3,000 more. I tell them straight up, I'll do a breakout, no extra charge, because I'm there for the day. I'm yours.
So let's talk about that mindset, because I think what you're hitting on a huge point, and a lot of speakers don't get it, which is there's one speaker that does the drive-by, the plane lands at 10 o'clock, they're on at 11, and they're back at, the 2 o'clock flight. And by the way, the meeting planners know that. And whatever, you're doing your job and you're performing well or whatever. But if their job is to make a conference successful and you're saying, I'll go to the networking event, what else can I do to make you successful? I'll MC it. Whether you're getting paid or not, that's a separate conversation. But I do like the mentality of, listen, I'm there for the day. Like, it's not like you're flying home to do another gig that evening, right? And that level of generosity leads to relationship development, leads to them going at the end, wow, that Thom guy, he's a good guy. He really was helpful. And it may or may not even be so much the stage chops, but you're one of us and you really, really went out of the way to, do a good job and help us out there. I think that's a great point. And what's been, I hate to sound crass, but like the ROI on that of being a good guy?
Well, I think that, again, it has to do with what my topic is too, right? I started speaking about how do you connect with people in a gadget crazy world. 11 years ago, we got our, what do you call them? Smartphones.
Right.
And everybody stopped talking to each other at conferences. Yeah. And my message is, here's how we maximize a live event. Here's why networking actually matters. And it's not put your name tag on this side and shake hands strong.
Yeah.
That. So part of it is because—
put down the damn phone and look me in the eye, right?
And I take that message and I literally halfway through the keynote go, hey, I have an idea. What if we make this conference a human laboratory? What if you put some of this in as soon as mine's over and we go to a coffee break? So the other thing is the way I structured my topic, I wasn't a networking speaker. I was the conference catalyst.
Yeah.
I'm giving them things to take to their career, which is what all speakers do, but we're going to implement it on site. And meeting planners would come to me and say, this is a tech conference. I've got 500 CIOs and nobody has their phone out at the coffee. What did you do to them?
Yeah, right.
And then they'd be like, well, we have to have this next year. So that's how I became a master of ceremonies, is I took the keynote, chopped it up into 7-minute slots. And now I can do it over 3 days as the master of ceremonies, helping make their event better. That's my
well, I love that
best event ever.
Yeah. Well, and I love that you're doing experiments in real time that have a real tactile response. People know when they're at an event, if people are actually, like the good old days of before smartphones, where during the breaks, we actually talk to other humans versus use that, there used to be bio breaks. Now there's tech breaks, right?
That's right.
Interesting. Great. Well, this has been fantastic, Thom. Any final words of wisdom to someone out there now who's about to get laid off? or you 10 years ago?
welcome to 2020. Well, first of all, now, there's no live events. I mean, my entire calendar has been cleared from March to May because of coronavirus. So now is probably not the time to say you want to be a speaker because there's nowhere to speak. But this too will pass. Live events aren't going to die. There's a lot of talk that we're going to go virtual. There will be more virtual, but live events aren't going anywhere. So when it comes back, if this is your calling and this is your dream, 2 things. You said it to begin with. You got to be great on stage. And, I hate to say that because then I'm saying I'm great on stage. But you have to, and you can't determine it because people tell you you're good at it. You determine it because people hire you after they've seen you speak. So if they say great speech, they might be saying being polite. If they say, what else can you do for me? Then they really liked you.
That's the ultimate compliment.
Right. And so if you're good, you should spend business. The second thing is that it takes a long time. It took me 3 years to get back to a corporate salary of what I was earning, as a director of marketing on that. And then the last thing is there's going to be ups and downs. And so you have to be a salesperson first. If you don't like sales, you cannot outsource it. Everybody wants to hire some.
Yeah. Somebody will do that for me.
Or get a bureau to discover them. If you're not a famous person, I love speakers bureaus. I get booked by 2 or 3 a year, but I don't get booked by 30 a year.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm just some middle-aged guy who tells some good stories on stage. That doesn't fit a niche for a speakers bureau.
Sure.
They don't book me. So I have to be constantly trying to put myself out there and I try to be the nicest guy I can. And I still believe nice guys finish first.
Well, there you go. Well, thank you so much, Thom. This has been great. I appreciate all that we unpacked together here today. There's a lot in there and a lot of wisdom and a lot of stuff that people can take home and actually do something with. So thank you so much. This has been great.
Thank you.
To learn more about Thought Leadership Leverage, please visit our website at thoughtleadershipleverage.com. To reach me directly, feel free to email me at peter@thoughtleadershipleverage.com. And please subscribe to Leveraging Thought Leadership on iTunes or your favorite podcast app to get your weekly episode automatically.